Everybody, this is Patty Sliney, Handy Quilter National Educator, and I wanted to make a video today on how you can create a straight line quilting design that's an extended width edge-to-edge design using a design that we have in Pro Stitcher Premium. It's in one of our featured designer folders, and it was in response to a question that was asked on our Pro Stitcher Quilters Facebook group. How can I do some straight line quilting? Really like to use a design, and I know I can use my horizontal channel locks, but I'd rather use Pro Stitcher and use a design. How can I do that? So you can actually create your own straight line design that's an extended width design. You can make the lines as far apart or close together as you want, and you can make it as wide as you want to accommodate your quilt. So I'm going to step you through how to do that. First off, let's go ahead and just create a little area. And I'm doing this in simulation. Of course, you'd be doing this on your quilt. So you would take your machine needle, place it about half an inch above the top edge of your quilt top and about maybe an inch, inch and a half to the left of the left edge of your quilt top. So you're up into the batting. So for simulation purposes, I'm just going to go ahead and type some numbers in here. It's going to be like a baby quilt. And then refresh. And to create that second point, after you've created the first point, you just bring your machine towards you a little bit and then off to the right edge, beyond the right edge of your quilt top, about an inch, inch and a half past the right edge of your quilt top to the right, again into the batting. Place your second point, and then you just touch into the height and type your height field. I usually add about 6 additional inches to whatever the length is of my quilt top, just so I don't run myself out of design. When I get to the last row, I can clear my area, create a new area to encapsulate any extra stitches that I don't want to stitch out, and just use Modify Crop inside, close the edges, baseline, and then jump my start point back down to that last row and finish off that last row or partial row. So I've got my area. Now let's go ahead and open up the design we're going to use, and it's in our Susan Manry featured designers. Here we go. So it's in the Susan Manry folder, and inside this folder she has a subfolder called Piano Keys, and you can see here's my file path that I'm in. I know I'm in this file path because everything is green. So if I go back up, you can see I'm in the designs folder. See how it's green? So designs, obviously I'm on my C drive, designs, and then Susan Manry folder is green. And then the subfolder Piano Keys is green, and it's reflected here in your file path. So that's where I am on my hard drive, and I'm going to select this design. I'm going to open it. And if baseline becomes available anytime you open a design, it's just good practice to baseline. Gives you a fresh, clean start. So now we're going to take this design and we're going to do some modifications. First thing we're going to do is we're going to make it a little wider. These designs I happen to know are each individual lines are half an inch apart. And I know that if I just turn on my grid, and I can move this design so it's on the grid so I can kind of see where it is. So let me position my crosshairs to a grid, and then we can go to Modify Reposition, and I can move this start point to my crosshairs by going to Modify Reposition and touching Start Point. And so now you can very easily see these lines in the design are stitching a half an inch apart. And I know this because my dark lines on my grid are 1-inch segments. The fainter lines are 1/4 inch. So that just gives you an idea of how dense this is going to be. And for me, that's a little too dense. I want these stitching about an inch apart. So I'm going to baseline because I moved it in Modify Reposition. I always want to start with a clean, fresh design before I go to my next edit step. So now let's make this wider. So I'm going to Modify Resize. I want to make this twice as wide, so that way these lines are are apart, twice as far apart. So if I touch into my width field, I don't want to turn my lock on because I don't necessarily need to resize this proportionally. I'm just worried about the width. So let's go ahead and double it and press enter. And now you can see these lines are going to stitch out 1 inch apart. So you can see they're falling on, and if I want to modify it again, if I want to move it just to make sure, I can do reposition start point again. And I can clearly see they're falling on the 1 inch lines. Okay, that modification for resizing I'm good with, so I'm going to baseline it. I'm also going to go back and turn my grid off because I don't need it. Refresh. Now I need to rotate this design because I want the lines to run horizontally. So let's go to Modify, Rotate. We're going to rotate it twice, 45 degrees clockwise, because I want my start and stops to be on the left side. We're going to baseline that modification. Now I want this to fill my area widthwise. So I'm going to go to the Repeat tab, and I want to be on the horizontal button on my right sidebar, and then I'm going to just touch Stretch, and that's going to stretch this design so it will fill my area. But I've got a little segment here that I don't need or don't want, and that is this little segment. I want my stop point to end here, and you'll see why once I repeat this. There's a really important reason for that. So I'm going to move this endpoint up here by going to Pro Stitcher, New Start End, and then in the right sidebar under the End column, I'm going to jump it up by design points, and this will jump it right up here. There's no design points in this segment. There's just one up here because it's a straight line. So if I click backwards once, puts my endpoint where I want it. So now I'm going to go to Modify Crop, and I'm going to crop Start End, and that's going to get rid of this line segment. And then I'm going to baseline that modification. Okay, so now I have a design, and at this point I would actually save it because I can use this and I can make it as wide or skinny as I want with future quilts. But if I want straight line 1 inch quilting, I know that this design, the height of it is only 5 inches. So it's going to fit in any machine's throat space. So I can use this design over and over and over again and just stretch it to whatever width I need. So I would do a file, save, selected, and I'm working on my laptop. So I'm going to save it to my laptop, and I have a little miscellaneous folder that I save a lot of my designs to, and I would call this something completely different. I'm going to call this straight line extended with edge to edge 1 inch. That tells me very descriptively what this is, so I'm going to save it. If you're on your machine doing this and not on your laptop, I personally would not save it to the C drive of your tablet. I would collapse your C drive. Did you see what I did? I just touched my down arrow. See how my C drive file folders are all open? I'm going to collapse them, and then I would save it to my D drive in some folder or to the root drive if I wanted. So I could take my flash drive to my laptop and save it in a folder on my laptop. And my folders are backed up. So on my laptop, so I always make sure that wherever I'm saving it on my laptop is in a folder that I've designated for my regular backup. So my designs that I make get backed up as well. All right, so now we're ready to fill our area. So we're going to go to Repeat, and I'm going to turn Stretch off, and we're going to touch Fill. And you can see I don't have any start and stop points. Well, we're going to fix that. What's actually happening is they're connected, and we have the fifth line is being stitched on top of by the next design element. We don't want that. So I'm going to go to vertical, and I'm going to create a gap between my design elements. I'm going to make my gap 1 inch because that's how far apart the lines are. So if I increase my vertical gap by 1 inch, And let's hide my area just for a second. Now, when I go to my view tab and I turn these on and off, I'm just hiding them. I'm not making my area go away. I'm not clearing the area. I'm just hiding it from view. I wanted to do that so you can easily see there are my start and stop points. And for example, this is my design element right here. These lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It stitches out 6 lines and it stops here and then it jumps down to the next design element. That's what I want. So we've got a space and we've got our endpoint. So let's turn on my area again, and then I'm going to refresh. Okay, so I'm happy with these repeats, but one thing, I'm going to zoom back in. I want to show you something. If I were to try to crop this, it will crop appropriately and it won't take away my start and end, but it might try to connect them in a way that we don't want. So the way to avoid that is to get your start and your endpoints off the area perimeter. So all we need to do is go to modify, reposition, use our nudge arrows, and I'm going to nudge this in just a little bit. So see how this is now not sitting right on the area? It's still in the batting because remember, I created my area about an inch to an inch and a half to the left of the left edge of my quilt top. So I've got an inch to an inch and a half to move this over. I'm good. Not a problem. Might nudge it a little bit more. I'm going to refresh. Okay. Now I'm happy with how these repeats all look. You must baseline at this point before you crop. This is a critical step. Please do not forget this baseline step anytime you're doing all over edge to edge work. Anytime you've created all your repeats, you're happy with your repeats, you must baseline first before you go to modify crop. So now we're going to crop outside to get rid of this extra stitching. And this is kind of extending. You can't really see it because I'm not zoomed in, but if I zoom way in, you can see it's extending a little bit. When I crop this, it will reconnect these, not to worry. So now I'm going to go to modify crop outside. I'm going to close my edges. So it reconnected them here, but it has preserved, if I zoom in, it's preserved my start and my end points all along here. So that's critically important. Now we're going to baseline that change. And of course, I would save this because I'm going to quilt this out on a baby quilt. So I do a file, save, selected. And for sure this time I would save it to my flash drive. So let's collapse our C drive. Makes it a lot easier to get to the flash drive. If you don't collapse it, your D drive is down there. You just have to scroll, 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 scroll to get to it. So there's your D drive. And this is fine. I put repeat piano keys. I'd probably save it in a folder that I would create, whatever I'd call it, Katie's quilt or Nancy's quilt. But I would save it, or, if you're going to just get rid of it, you can save it to the D drive and then delete it later when you're all done. So you click save. I'm clicking cancel just to save a step. One last step before you stitch this out, and it's critically important. If you do not do this, and you have your jump set to like 3 to 6 inches, Pro Stitcher is going to stitch all this out, get to your endpoint, and then it's going to do an auto jump to the next segment, start point, and start stitching that. We don't want that. We want Pro Stitcher to always pause at every single endpoint. So in case you need to advance your quilt, you have the opportunity to do that. So you're going to go to your settings tab, go to auto jump, and you're going to set your auto jumps to 0. When you do that, that tells Pro Stitcher to pause at every single endpoint. Now you may not need to advance for maybe 1 or 2 or even 3 design segments, depending on how big your machine's throat space is, but it still gives you the opportunity when you need to advance. So that's how you can create your own straight line quilting design. When you resize the individual design element, you can make these lines as far apart as you want. 1 inch is, pretty standard. If you want them bigger, you can widen it so they're 1.5 inches, 2 inches, whatever you want. And just save that design element, name it so you know, like you saw me name it, uh, with 1 inch in there, so it's easy for you to know. And you can use them over and over again and just use the repeat horizontal stretch to stretch them as wide as your area. So I hope that's helpful. I want you to practice this on your laptop in Pro Stitcher and Simulation. See if you can repeat the steps and you'll have your very own straight line stitching design. Just remember those key steps. You got to nudge your design over so that your start and stop points on the left margin are inside your area and not on the area line. And you need to make sure that you set your auto jump to 0. Happy quilting!